What's going on YouTube? Claic Yuzolt back again with another Final Fantasy Brave Exvius video, and in today's video we're talking about Elena. We're talking about that CG hotness that is coming in for a global original unit along with her evil nemesis Morgana. How good are they? Do they stand up to the meta, and are they worth your lapis? Let's get into it. So on this banner, we do not have any 3 stars or 4 stars. You are specifically going for either Morgana or Elena, our 5-star base units. And first up, we have Morgana. And Morgana is going to be our evoke damage dealer, black mage in a way. Kind of has a mix of both, but most of her full brunt damage is going to be on her evoke magic. She is a very beautiful looking unit. If you look here, they do have the chaining families at the top now. So thank you so much to the wiki workers and everything like that. It really helps us out. Absolute Zero, Chaos Wave, Disorder, and Bolting Strike. Pretty good chaining families, if I do say so myself. Moving on down, we do have a TMR, Empress's Signet. It's essentially going to be Rod Mastery. Magic 20 is separated from the 30%. You put it together, 50% with a Rod, that's going to be Rod Mastery, along with Evo Mag put on top of it. Pretty good TMR, right? Not everybody's going to be able to take advantage of the Evo Mag, but what I do like about it is if you don't already have a Rod Mastery, or maybe you need more than one for different units, or you want to stack them, here you go. There's 50% there with a Rod. Very good. Her STMR is really where it gets interesting. First, Nirvana, Attack 10, Magic, Big Beefy 160, Spirit 40. Looking at the effect, it gives us True Dual Wield for Magic by 25%. Incredible, right? It's not a materia. It's not on its own. It is a weapon you put in your hand. You're not too sad about putting it on because it has 160, and it gives you True Dual Wield Magic by 25%. Incredible whale baits STMR here, and it's going to get me. I'm going to be trying to get my hands on one of these, plus the artist. Beautiful. Moving on down after that, though, that's when Morgana, and it sounds weird, starts to fall down. She's beautiful. She has great TMR and STMR. But her kit really isn't the best. They kind of messed that up. Her first few abilities, she gets a look at the info on the enemies, increase her magic by 60% magic and spirit. She has a few abilities here that go through some of those chaining families. We have Absolute Zero and then Chaos Wave back and forth. It can she's very good at imperiling, right? So she can decrease all of the different elements. We have ice, wind, light, dark, and ice. I guess ice is the last one here, but this is ice and light together, so excuse me. That she can do. So she can do about 65% here. She has an ability later she can do about 100%, and then she does a certain amount of damage based off her magic. So it's going to be normal magic damage here. It's not going to be the evoke magic. It's not going to be anything crazy. This is going to be based off her magic completely, and that's going to be it. So she gets to imperil and do a little bit of magic. Next up, she has the ability to dual cast a lot of these moves. You can see it pretty much covers all of her abilities. There's like one here that it's not going to touch on, and then also her Libra ability is not going to get touched, and she gets that at 6-star. Next up comes her evoke damage, and remember, evoke damage has a lot of good things about it, a lot of bad things about it. Evoke damage is not ever touched when it comes to physical or magic mitigation. When a boss has that, it goes right through that. Evoke damage is calculated a little bit different, but with this unit, much like the Summertime Folka and Citra, this is going to be based completely off of her magic. Before, Citra and Folka were based off of their spirit. So if we look here, evoke damage, 6 times multiplier, completely put into the magic realm, 100% magic there on the ratio, so you can see that. So her first ability here, Chaos Wave, Chaining Family and Arcane Chaos, and does 6 times multiplier. But here's where things start getting bad, and we saw it up here a little bit with Glistening Ice. We start having to pay our evoke gauge to be able to do these chaining abilities. And the problem with that is it starts stacking up really quick. I'm going to say it right now. Chaining 2 Morgana together seems almost impossible unless you go ahead and bump down to these tiny little moves, because our upper moves here in a minute when we get into them are going to cost 3, 2. The highest you can get your evocation gauge is at a 10. So what are we going to do? We can't actually chain. You'll see in a minute she can quad cast, but we can't really chain that. Maybe we don't have that many evocation gauge you know, we don't have that many orbs to be able to chain with that. So that's where she starts falling off the rails. It's different because with Citra and Folka, first off, they do more damage. Their multipliers are actually higher. And in the end, they end up doing more damage because they cost MP instead of this evocation gauge bullshit, which actually causes her. I know it's fun, it sounds interesting, but they should never have made it more than 1, ever. because you have to understand that you have to use 2 of them. They're both going to be taken from the same evocation. Did you get what I'm saying? Anyway, she has a neutral attack here, has no kind of element with it, with a 6 times multiplier. Moving on down, we have an ice damage one that is a 5.5 times multiplier and increases crystallized spikes and glacial needles, which is its own move, putting that up by a little bit more. So putting it up to a 7.5 times multiplier, which really isn't anything too crazy. And again, if you compare her to Siltra, I want to say Siltra, I'll just say Siltra. Siltra has the whole chaining with a chain finisher at the end. We're not going to see that with our girl Morgana here. Moving on down, we have the wind one, which is going to be almost exactly the same. Crystallized spikes. Holy Radiance is probably going to be your go-to move. 5.5 times multiplier, putting up Holy Beam and Holy Radiance, and then allowing you to chain it up with Absolute Zero, which is what you can do there. And then she also has a dark one. After that, we do have a buffing ability, increase magic and spirit by 150%, increase evocation gauge by 3, so she does have ways to put up that evocation gauge so she can actually use her abilities. And then next up, we have Dimensional Arcana. Now we're going to go ahead and take this one off. We're going to put this one on. This allows her, this is at 7-star now, with a TMR or an STMR equipped, allows her to triple cast. But again, if you are chaining her with another Morgana, which is essentially what you most of the time want to be doing when you're trying to use evoke damage anyway, you know what I mean? Now, not all the time. Again, she has Absolute Zero, Chaos Wave. Those are great magic family chaining ways. Then she'll have Bolting Strike down there. She could be chaining with a lot of people. But if you're trying to use 2 of them together, which a lot of people want to do, it just costs so much of your your summon gauge. You're just not going to be able to do it. With this triple cast sounds nice, but look, boom, 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 it starts costing way too much. Thank God that not all of her cooldown abilities cost that gauge, right? First ability, which is a great one, Elemental Innervation. 4-turn cooldown available in turn 1. Decrease ice, wind, light, and dark resist by 100% for 3 turns to all allies. And then enables skill for 2 turns to cast her. Myriad Arcana, which is going to be quad cast. Okay, that's going to be our quad cast ability. So that is amazing. At first when I saw that, I was like, whoo, she's going to be popping off, baby. We're going to be going in there going ham. But the problem is we're limited because of that summon gauge, man. So the Imperil is incredible for anybody and any team, right? You're going to be able to go in there and Imperil by 100% on all these elements. That is amazing, and it only has a 1-turn downtime because it lasts 3 turns and it's a 4-turn cooldown. Very, very good. Arcane Trade is also a very good ability. Increases that evocation gauge by 8. That way you can go ahead and get that thing almost full, and if you have another one, if you want to cast that as well, that puts it up to the 10, and then you can start chaining around, and it's on a 4-turn ability cooldown. But the problem is, like, after you use a lot of your abilities, you're going to be running out of these orbs. God, you guys get it by now. I don't want to hammer on it too hard. Next up is Unstable Energy, available also on turn 1. Evo damage 25 times with 100% going from the magic to all enemies. Increase magic and spirit by 200% for 3 turns to cast her. Increase modifiers 3 times for 3 turns to cast her on her bigger abilities. And again, Holy Radiance is a very, very good one. I love the way this looks, by the way, this little icon. Love it. So that's going to be another great ability you guys can cast, but it does cost 3 of your Evo gauge, which we know we're going to be straining as it is anyway. Moving on down, we have 2 more chaining abilities that she has. Bursting Luminosity. Light Evo damage 8 times to all enemies. Increase modifier 1.5 times to Bursting Luminosity. So itself, if you cast it, it's going to put up its modifier to a 9.5 times multiplier, which isn't the worst in the world. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. Then we look over here and, 2 gauges. So, trying to triple cast that? I'm sorry, that costs 6. So your friend isn't going to be able to do it because you can only have 10 total. You can't pay 6 and pay 6 because your friend and you are going to be fighting for that 10 and it's going to eventually run out. You're not going to be able to do it. It's going to be tough out there. Then we look down at Spectral Cutter. We have Evo damage 9 times to all enemies, increased 2 times to itself, which I do like the whole... You know, you cast it once and it increases it for a little bit, and you know, after the first use, it keeps getting stronger. Again, the problem is Bolting Strike, awesome. 2 Evo gauge, not awesome, unless you guys decide to somehow increase it so we can hold 2 Espers. Maybe then this will start working. Maybe like you get it to 20 and halfway you can summon an Esper and halfway you know, I don't know how you would do it, but you can maybe fill it up twice. Like one is like the orange and the next one's purple. I don't know, but until that happens, our girl Morgana is going to be left out in the dust. Going on down through her passive, she does have dual wielding of one-handed weapons. Great. That's going to go great with that STMR. Increase magic 40%, increase Evo magic by 10%, increase mag 40% when equipped with a rod, so like a rod mastery. Poison, silence, confuse, petrify. Boom. The only thing she's missing is paralysis right there. Increase light and dark resist by 30%, making her easier to bring into trials. We have Spirit MP up, recover that MP 5% per turn, but who cares when it only costs Evo gauge? Well, I mean, if you use her proper rotation, you are going to be spending some MP because you can't be using her Evo gauge all the time. Increase magic by 30%, spirit by 10. You know, these are all just stat increases. This is a big one to point out. She does get increased equipment mag 50% and spirit 20% when dual wielding. So that's going to be make sure you're dual wielding with her. Chance to counter magic attacks with energy conversion. Looking at energy conversion. Increase your Evo gauge by 1 and her LB by 5. Now, it is a 40% chance, but she's probably not getting hit by magic attacks too often, if at all, and then it only puts up your Evo gauge by 1. She can't even cast one of her abilities for 1. How is she can't even cast it once for 1? Okay. I just think maybe she get a little global buff here in the future. They'll just slap her on, maybe change her up a little bit. I don't know. I guess not all units have to be insane, but she kind of is counterintuitive, if that makes any sense. Increase, okay, sorry, that we had just talked about what energy conversion was. At the beginning of the turn, autocast Arch Rivals every turn if Elena is alive, and Elena is going to have a similar ability that if Morgana or her are on the same team, they're going to have Arch Rivals be activated, and they get some special passive out of it. For Morgana, if Elena is alive on the team, increase modifier 2 times for 1 turn to caster all offensive skills except for Spectral Cutter, which doesn't even matter if you put it up to Spectral Cutter because you can't cast it that often anyway. Moving on, increase, and you know, Elena and Morgana do have a lot of uses if they are together. They can chain together. They, you know, Morgana could be imperiling for her to get in because Elena can only do about 75%. We'll go over that in a minute. But I don't think you want to be taking Morgana on most teams anyway. Sadly, she is such a beautiful unit. Increase magic 40%. Increase light and dark resist by 30% when equipped with a rod. So that's 60% dark resist, which is great if you have a rod on because of her other passives. Increase defense and spirit 20% with a robe. This is all incredible. Evo damage 20%. Increase MP 20%. Autocast Myriad Arcana at the start of battle, which if we know what that is, again, that's going to be the quad cast. So at the beginning of every battle you go into, she can quadcast. Now, is she gonna have the ability power to be able to do that? Not unless you're casting her crappy little magic skills she had at the beginning, you know, those little ones we had at the top, because you're not gonna have any evocation gauge. So I don't know what to tell you. Autocast power evocation at the start of battle. So power evocation, increase evocation gauge by 3, so you are gonna have a little bit to work with. But when we're talking about chaining, really, I think this is here in order for you to be able to cast this ability right here, Unstable Energy. And of course, you can cast this ability, but when you know, that means turn 1 is kind of wasted because you can't actually use any of her quad casting here, I'll turn on the quad casting for you guys right here. You can't really use her quad casting for doing damage. You can do it for building up for the next turn, which is great. But the first turn, that quad cast is really going to be there from the Myriad Arcana to build her up, if that makes any sense. She's going to have modifiers increase on crystallized spikes, Holy Radiance, which I talked about, Shadow Well, and Storm Gale, and increase LB gauge 3 per turn, which means you're going to be able to cast your LB quite often, which maybe can save her a little bit. We've talked about most of these abilities down here, talking about the triple cast, etc., the quad cast coming in. Now let's look at her LB and see if this saves her at all. It's going to cost 35 crystals. Thank God it doesn't cost evocation gauge anymore. Am I right? Am I right? If we max it out, it's going to be evoke damage 35 times, which is pretty big to all enemies. Increase evocation gauge by 5 and enable quad cast Myriad Arcana. Going to be able to cast it 4 times, anything you want, for 2 turns. So she has a lot of ways to unlock her ability to be able to quad cast. Evoke damage is incredible. The only thing, another bad thing about evoke damage is you cannot have killer ability. So while it does get through that damage, physical mitigation or magic mitigation, it doesn't really care about that, or resistances, it goes straight through that. The problem with it is also it doesn't have killer abilities. It cannot take advantage of killer abilities, which already puts it on the back foot. So it's really a niche use, and then on top of that, using her here, because she doesn't really have any supporting abilities besides her Imperil, I just think Silka's the better unit overall. Maybe they can turn down these numbers. I've pretty much explained why she's just really not that great of a unit. If maybe her modifiers were so large that even if she just double casted a couple of these abilities and went in and did some damage, maybe that would make her better. But right now, she's not even doing as much damage as I said Filka can do. And Filka, or Filtra, however you want to say it, has so much support to back her up. Much more than Morgana can do. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because essentially, in a lot of turns, you're going to be casting this Holy Beam move, just because it costs MP, you know, you want to be doing that light chaining or whatever, whichever one you want to be chaining with, you're going to be avoiding using these almost at all. These are like cut off. These 2 abilities are like cut off if you're chaining with a copy. Then moving on, you're going to be casting Holy Radiance whenever you can because it costs 1, and then when you run out of that and you can't cast that anymore because you don't have any more evocation gauge, You're going to Holy Beam. So overall, Morgana mid-tier at maximum for me. Not worth pulling on, and really wish they would have done a better job and thought about how the chaining would have worked. Next up, we have what the unit most people have been waiting for is Elena CG Hot Mama Global Original for the 3rd anniversary. Hybrid damage dealer, about to say physical, hybrid damage dealer with a little bit of support, 5-star base. Chaining families are Bolting Strike, A-Ray, Stardust Ray, and Disorder, so pretty good chaining families. Again, Bolting Strike is becoming one of my favorites because I can see people being able to chain that without the help of outside, maybe macros or, you know, the magnification trick. I think that Bolting Strike can be done with your hands pretty easily, so it's really great, and I want to see that more often, so people don't really have to rely on outside things. Looking at her TMR, it's going to be one of the greatest swords in the entire game. Australia, attack 150, magic 130, TMR, two-handed weapon? Well, it's got a little bit of it's exclusive to Elena, so only Elena can use it, but that's okay because she really wants to use it. All of the other true double-handed you know, hybrid damage dealers are salivating at the chance of getting this, but it's only going to be for Elena, so you definitely want to grab that up, obviously, if you're going to be using her, and if you pull her, you definitely are. Looking at the STMR, we have increased attack magic 60%, and increased equipment attack and magic 50% when single-wielding any weapon, which is going to be true double hand for either. So, first off, that sounds incredible, right? It's even more incredible when you think about it this way. It literally can be used on any unit that you want to use true double hand on, right? If you want to use attack, well, think about this as an STMR. Attack 60, attack 50%, true double hand. Pretty good. Now let's think about the other way. I want to use it on a mage. Magic 60, magic 50%, true double hand. Still sounds amazing, and that's all packed into one. So hybrid damage dealers are going to love it, attack damage dealers are going to love it, and magic damage dealers are going to love it. It's an incredible STMR. Whales, come on at me because I'm going to be going for it really hard. Moving on down, one of the things I want to show off is her abilities. That's right, these are all actives. Well, I guess there is some passives in there, but most of them are actives. These are her passives, these are more actives. She's a little bit complicated when you first look at her, but I promise you, she's not that complicated once you understand what she does. For the most part, she is going to be imbuing and imperiling water, lightning, light, and ice damage. So think about that. She can imbue herself with those 4 elements. She can imperil those 4 elements. She really has 3 damage dealing abilities you're going to be worrying about. Blade of the Heavens, Blade of the Dawn, and then Blade of the Crystal. And honestly, you're only going to be worrying about 2 if you use the damage rotation I'm going to tell you about, and that's going to be Blade of the Crystal and Blade of the Heavens. Both of these are just hybrid damage dealing abilities. 12 times multiplier, 15 times multiplier, they seem really low. That's garbage for hybrid damage dealing, but all of her abilities are going to start buffing up her multipliers anyway as you build her up, so it's going to be pretty good. I do like Battle Insight as it is an AoE, it's a single target covering all different status effects, break for 55%. So if you need to Libra the enemy, you can also break them all the way down the stat line for 55%, which is incredible. She has a finger snap-esque ability with Purifying Slash, and moving on down, she has a ton of other abilities. So she's kind of a weird unit because she does have triple casts, and she has a couple of double, like W casts she can use as well. Certain abilities can be cast in both, certain abilities cannot be cast in both. It really comes down to you understanding the unit and understanding what exactly you want to get done, okay? She has the ability to decrease ice resist 50%. Again, this is going to be her 2 abilities right here that she can imbue and imperil light or ice damage. She can put up her own HP and MP, increase her LB gauge, and increase her own LB fill rate. She has Aurora Tempest, which I don't think is something you guys are really going to be using. Ice and Light hybrid damage, 18 times to all enemy. Decrease Ice and Light resist 50%, but you've already kind of done that up here. And, you know, you really want the imbue over just doing random damage with it attached, in my opinion. So there's that. Way of the Blossom, 5-turn cooldown available in turn 1. Decrease ice resist by 75% for 3 turns to all enemies. So there's Way of the Blossom and there's Way of the Aurora. Aurora is going to be your way when you're wanting to use light damage. Way of the Blossom is going to be what you're going to be using when you use ice damage. In my opinion, you want to go light damage. That is going to be your best way of getting the most damage you can out of a lot of these abilities and doing the most damage that you can, okay? But Way of the Blossom is going to put down the ice resist by 75%, mitigate damage taken by everybody by 30%, which is awesome. That's for 3 turns. Grant HP barrier 1000 for all allies, great. And then increases modifiers for 4 turns to Blade of the Crystal, Blossom Frost Hedge, and Blossom Vigilance. And it also puts her LB up by 40. Her LB already only costs, but costs 40. So this is both of these abilities do put up her LB gauge all the way. That is going to allow you to cast her LB. Moving on down to Way of the Aurora, decrease light resist by 75%, increase her attack and magic by 250% for 3 turns, increase fire, light, and dark resistance for everybody by 70%, which is absolutely bonkers. Increase modifiers 8 times for Aurora Radiant Might, Aurora Valor, and Blade of Crystal. And Blade of Crystal, again, I do believe is going to be the move we want to use. Next up, we have Celestial Guidance, available on turn 1, 6 turn cooldown. Decrease ice and light resist by 75% for 3 turns of all enemies. So we can we can do both of them if we want to, up to 75% from our other abilities, or we could use one of each of these. Increase modifier 6 times to Aurora Tempest, and increase modifier 9 times to Aurora Storm. Currently, right now, with the way we're thinking she's going to work, we are not going to be using this ability almost at all, just to let you guys know. Moving on down through the passives, because we haven't even gotten to all the other abilities she unlocks randomly throughout the fight. Increase equipment and attack and magic 50% and actually 25% when single wielding any weapon, and increase ice and light resist. So she has 50% attack and mag, true double hand right there. She has a bunch of stat boost up, increase LB fill rate, stat boost up, petrify resist, blind resist, increase attack and magic, increase attack and magic 50%. So that's 100% to both attack and magic, true double hand, insane. Autocast Aurora Blossom Arts. Essentially, Aurora Blossom Arts allows you to cast these 2 abilities here, Aurora Arts and Blossom Arts. We'll get into that in a minute. I know it's complicated, but we'll get there. Increase attack and magic 30%. And all the defensive stats when equipped with a sword, or do the same thing with a great sword. Now, this is where people start getting confused. They say, yo, Claic, I thought she wanted to use her sword. Why are they throwing in greatsword? I do believe it's there to give you options. It's there to allow you to mess around a little bit. Her sword is still best in slot for her by far. Definitely be using that. But maybe in the future, if we do get a greatsword, maybe they have something planned. We might want to put a greatsword into her hand, and that's why that is available for her there. She has physical and magic killers against demons and humans. However, when we are talking about using the hybrid damage, only physical killers are applied. So don't be stacking up a bunch of physical and magic killers on your hybrid damage dealer, because they ain't all going to apply. Only the physical ones are going to apply to both the physical and magical damage that unit is going to do. Increase MP attack magic 30% when equipped with a light weapon. Again, Claic, what's up, dude? Her weapon doesn't have an element. I know. I think this is for something in the future they're planning, or if you just want to mix and match up weapons, giving her a little bit of variety if you really want it. Recover her MP 5% per turn, which is going to be great for her. And Paralyze and Confuse resist. She just completed it. Paralyze, Confuse, Petrify, and Blind. All right, dude. That's all already done. That's the one thing great about Elena. She does not need any kind of status elements resist, unless you just want to go ahead and bump her up for when she's going to be imperiled. You know, when she goes into the fight, you have to bump it up there when she gets imperiled. Other than that, you ain't got to worry about anything. She already has it pre-combat, 100%. So you got to put a ribbon on her or a shortcake. She doesn't need any of that. She's good to go. Increase HP, attack, magic 30% when equipped with an ice weapon. Again, ice or light weapon. This may be in the future something they're doing, or just so you can mess around with your own unit. She has physical evasion 20%, magical evasion 20%. So the one thing I want you to see here is all the stat buffs she's getting up. She is a stat monster. Her builds are going to allow her to get to astronomical numbers in attack and magic. She's going to be able to be very tanky in both spirit, defense, and HP. She's going to be very good. Okay, she's going to be very good in those things. Again, if Morgana's on her team, similar to how we talked about Morgana a couple of minutes ago, she is going to get an ability to trigger called Arch Rivals. Increase physical damage against demons and humans by 100%. To cast her, increase magic damage against demons and humans by 100%. So it's physical and magic killer. Again, as long as you're using hybrid damage, it's only going to count the physical anyway. But if you really just want to try to one-shot a, you know, maybe a demon or a human, and you want to take a lane and you got Morgana, throw Morgana on the team for that extra 100%, and maybe that'll just have you push through that threshold that you wanted to do. Other than that, I don't really see you wanting to bring Morgana in your team. I mean, I guess the Imperil is pretty good too for 100%, but hey, I don't know. Astrea's partner. So this is going to be her TMR or STMR ability. Increase equipment, attack, and magic 50% when single wielding any weapon. So that is going to be up to 150% attack and magic true double hand. Increase attack, magic, defense, spirit, HP, and MP by 30%. Increase LB damage by 50%. Enable skill Speed of Light. Now let's go look at what Speed of Light is. Speed of Light allows you to use your abilities all the time on triple cast. And these are the abilities you can use with triple cast. You'll notice these abilities are not available, making her setup turns be like kind of like just a W cast kind of way. That's one of the things about Elena that makes her kind of hard to figure out exactly how you want to be playing her. We're going to go by what I have seen online and what I've actually researched it. Cooley and I were talking about it. We think it's correct. What we think her best rotation is, but again, it could always change because of how crazy her abilities are, how many she has, and how they really kind of lock some behind triple cast or a different W cast, etc. But once you have her STMR or TMR equipped, she does have triple cast of those abilities unlocked at all times. Astral Swordswoman, she gets another 50% true double hand for attack and magic. That's so much. Recover MP 10% per turn, increase spirit 20%, and then last but not least, you definitely want to get her to 120 if you're going to use her. She gets attack and magic up by 60% with a sword, and there's the great sword if you end up wanting to use that. But most importantly, she gets a high modifier increase to all these abilities. And a lot of people ask, why do hybrid damage dealers have such high modifiers? I don't understand why they don't just do OP amounts of damage. How is she not insane? Because once we go through her whole rotation, she's going to be around, above 50 times the multiplier when she starts balling off with her abilities. And it's because with a hybrid damage dealer, you take physical and magic and you do different calculations. You end up adding them together. So you have to be paired against their spirit and their defense. And you take that modifier and you really half it. And it sounds weird, but that's pretty much how it works. So you really want to see really high hybrid damage dealing modifiers to make sure they're going to actually be able to do the damage. Moving on down to the rest of her abilities, guys. It is so much to talk about. Aurora Arts is going to be something we're going to be casting in our rotation. Increase attack and magic 150% for 10 turns to caster. Increase resist to charm for 10 turns to caster. Increase modifier 4 times to caster. Can't be dispelled. So right here, you notice that there is not a time on this. There's not like for 4 turns, 3 turns. She is going to keep this forever. Okay, you need to cast that and you're good. That is going to increase these abilities by 4 times forever. You're good to go. Another thing is, a lot of these abilities aren't going to stack up. You can't be going in here and casting, Way of the Blossom and then Way of the Aurora and get, all these different Blade of the Crystal up by 16 times. That's not going to happen. At least we don't think it's the way it's going to work. It shouldn't work that way through the data mine. You guys let me know if you guys are testing it out. If it stacks up, holy moly, but I don't think it really is going to. But separate abilities can, and it's going to allow for that to happen. And this is one of the ways we're going to do it. We have Blossom Arts, again. This is going to be more of the defensive look for our ice build. Mitigate damage 30% for 10 turns to caster, increase stop resist 100%, and increase modifiers on the abilities that we talked about before. Then we have a bunch of other abilities going down through here. I'm not going to talk about them all. You guys can go through it and read through these. These are abilities you can go to use in cases of which you want to try a different kind of damage dealing, setup, or you want some support out of her. But for me, I'm going to help my support do that, and I'm going to let Elena do her thing, and that is dealing damage. Because a lot of these supporting pieces that she can go and dig for, through casting all these different abilities, really aren't worth the time away from dealing her massive amounts of damage. So we're going to not go over all of them. If you'd like to read them, the wiki is there for you to read. If you'd like to use them, you can figure out ways that you would like to do that. For me, that's not what I'm going to be using Elena for, so I'm not going to cover it. Moving on down, we have her Giant LB, which is incredible. Hybrid damage 45 times to all enemies. Increase attack, defense, magic, and spirit 150% for 3 turns to all allies. And increase modifier 18 times to a lot of the abilities that we like. More importantly, Blade of the Crystal, because that's what we're going to be going for. And then 10 times to Blade of the Dawn and Blade of the Heavens. And it's one of the reasons why we're going to use Blade of the Crystal. Okay, so I've talked a lot about Elena. What I want to do here is I'm going to go ahead and bring up a sheet I have here that is detailing her rotation, and I'm going to have this linked from an Imgur post down below so you guys can see it as well. Now again, I don't know if this is the absolute best, but looking over Reddit, talking with my friends, talking with Cooley, going over some of the smarter people than even I am in FFBE, this is what we're thinking is going to be the way you want to use her. So in turn 1, we want to cast her Imperil and her Imbue for light. Then we want to cast Way of the Aurora, okay? That is going to increase modifiers across the board, put up her attack and magic by 250%, allow us to do more damage. Turn 2, because Way of the Aurora has filled up our LB gauge, we are going to go ahead and cast our LB, Light of Salvation. The reason we want to do that is more modifiers up, big damage, but also more modifiers up on Blade of the Crystal, which is what Blade of Crystal is what we're going to be using on turn 3 and 4. So through Way of the Aurora and Light of Salvation, we have now bumped up Blade of Crystal to our extremely high modifier, so we're going to cast that for 3 turns. Next up, on turn 5, we're going to be casting Aurora Arts. That was that ability I showed you down below that gives you like 150% up on your stats to yourself for 10 turns, and then it also permanently increases like Blade of the Crystal and other abilities. And then we're going to be casting, instead of, because we can't triple cast, instead of casting Blade of Crystal, we're going to be casting Blade of the Heavens. Reason being is Blade of the Crystal has lost some of its buffs from other abilities, and Blade of the Heavens actually ends up having a higher modifier at this point, so that's going to be why that's thrown in there. Going to turn 6 is going to be an exact replay of turn 1. We're going to go with the, we got to imbue and imperil again, and then we also need to cast our CD, so we get up that big 250% magic and attack buff, along with getting those modifiers up to Blade of the Crystal and giving us our LB again, and that's what we're going to be casting on turn 7. Okay, turn 8 and 9, look, I mean, this is looking exactly like you did turns 1, 2, and 3, and 4. You're going to be casting Blade of the Crystal times 3, and on turn 10, you may be wondering why we are not casting Aurora Arts, and instead of casting 3 Blade of the Heavens, because again, on this turn, Blade of the Crystal has lost some of its modifier buffs, so Blade of the Heavens ends up eking it out when it comes to modifiers, and the reason we're casting it 3 times and not Aurora Arts is because Aurora Arts modifier increases are permanent, so we no longer need to cast that for the remainder of the fight, and we're good to go. So, hopefully this helps you with playing her. It seems like you look through all those skills, you look through all those abilities. It really seems like she is super complicated. And she really is in the end. But if you get down that thing I just told you about, that rotation, she's going to be doing a lot of damage. She's going to be up there. Now, where does she end up on the damage scale? Again, we're testing her still. The greatest minds of FFBE are going at it. She's a very complicated character, but we can safely say she's going to be up there with Xeno. There are some cases where if you have maybe an outside imperil that does 100% instead of her 75%, depending on how you work around with that, she could do more damage than Xeno, but it's not by much at all if she does. And if she does just a little bit less damage than Xeno, again, she's around Xeno damage. She beats Esther by a little bit like Xeno does, probably like 18% to 20% on your damage. So in the end, why would I want to use Elena? I like Elena because of her hyper damage dealing ability here. Hyper damage dealers can attack a boss differently than a physical damage dealer could on their own, right? If a boss has a lot of defense, a hyper damage dealer can really build up their magic and go to town on the spirit and take advantage of that low spirit where a normal physical attacker couldn't. Another great thing about Elena, and a lot of people have been fighting on this, and I don't agree, light chaining has kind of gone to the side. There aren't a lot of great light or water chaining units out there. And with Elena, you kind of have that in your back pocket. You may have Esther for lightning, and then, you know, obviously if you have some kind of outside imbue, you could use her for those other elements. But Elena does that all kind of in her own core. So you don't really need to go find somebody that can imbue water and imbue light. She's going to be able to do that on her own. So that's kind of why I want her. I want her for those uses when maybe Esther or Xeno aren't getting the job done, and Elena's really going to be there for me with that hyper damage dealing, etc. One other bad thing about Elena I want to point out, which maybe isn't a bad thing, but for me, looking at other users, she's going to be a little bit tough to build, right? Because as I was saying with hyper damage healers, you really want to focus on one or the other when it comes to, I guess she's really not that hard to build. But you want to focus on one or the other when it comes to fighting a boss maybe that has really high defense or really high magic. Elena kind of solves that problem with all of her true double hand, all of her stats being buffed up. She's going to be extremely stat heavy unit, so maybe she won't be as hard as normal hyper damage dealers are to build, because you really have to mix and match and try to get your best in either way, but she has the ability to be an extremely high. I've seen 3,600 on both attack and magic. She's going to be dishing out that damage, and she's going to be a lot of fun once you take the time to learn her. Alright guys, so that is my review of this banner. Should you pull for it? It's gonna be tough. Honestly, I'd say no. Free-to-play players, stay away from this banner unless you really love Elena, obviously. But there are going to be banners coming out there that are going to be much better for you. She does not out-damage Bartz. CG Bartz is going to be a banner coming out in the next couple months, and he is paired along with an extremely talented white mage, Lena, God, why can't I talk right now? Who is going to be the top white mage in the game. I think Myra rivals her at this point, even when after she comes out. So those are just my 2 cents, and both of them still have the option of receiving enhancements in the future. And then Elena, again, damage dealing, you know, she isn't that big of a bump up from Esther. She really is around Xeno levels, and Regina's still on top as queen. I think Elena can get around those damage dealers, don't get me wrong, but you're really pulling for, you know, what I talked about. Being able to have a hybrid damage dealer, being able to attack monsters maybe differently and attack their weaknesses where maybe physicals are kind of locked out, along with having light and water built into her kit that you can mess around with and is not that popular right now. So It's really going to be up to you. They have great TMRs, great STMRs, so that's another great thing. But Morgana is avoid at all costs, in my opinion. I'm not saying I'm not saying that you can't have fun with her. I'm just saying that if you really want your Lapis worth, she's not going to be the option. I know this has been a long video, guys, but these are very, honestly, pretty complicated units, and I wanted to make sure, and I tried my best to explain it to you, to make you feel less, how can I put this, intimidated by maybe Elena's kit, because I was first intimidated as well. So if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. What are your thoughts on Elena? Too complicated? I'm going back to my Esther. Not big enough of a damage boost, sticking with Xeno, or I want that mama, I'm going to get her anyway. Those shoes, I need them. I'm talking about her boots she has on. And then subscribe for future content. We'll catch you guys in the next video. Remember, I am pulling for these units tonight at 8 p.m. EST on my stream. Join me there.